Muy buenas noches, Steve. Gracias por estar en el canal. Bienvenido. Bueno, antes de hablar sobre el tema de la fotografía, has hecho unos cortos interesantes y me gustaría que, bueno, contaras su experiencia siendo director, ya estando dirigiendo.
Okay, before we start talking about, first, welcome to the channel. Second, before we start talking about your work as a cinematographer, let's talk about your work as a director. What can you tell us about those films that you had made, like Paradise and Nothing Loose?
Oh, Nothing to Lose in Paradise, huh? Wow. Paradise was a long time ago. And that was an interesting one. That was through a company called Generation Courage. I'm no longer associated with them. They had brought the script to me. I had read the script, and I think it was 20 pages. It was a heavy build. One day we filmed, I want to say, 16 pages in a day, and our day we got 5 out. Had a couple clumsy interns. We had a camera drop and fall on us. People scared. I tried to build as much humor and value to the story that was there. It was a difficult occurrence, actually, because the writer had some obsession with black ooze coming out of the ceiling or anything. And I'm just like, that's not plausible, not for the budget that we have. So we had to do some changes and some move arounds. And then at that time, I had a good makeup artist named Jhon Van Buskirk. And we had talked about having them be wraiths instead of zombies, just because zombies were so overdone. We had to make it evil, but not redundant. So he actually found chocolate syrup that was black, and that's what we had coming out of everybody's mouths. Fun things like that. Nothing to Lose was my thesis piece for film school. Graduated 2012, 2013 from MPI, the Motion Picture Institute. And that piece was very personal to me. Covered a lot of volume of, survivor's guilt, alcoholism, but shown through cigarettes, just addiction as a whole. I've had my own battles with alcoholism on my own, so there was a lot of me in it. And there's always a big value for me with supporting the military. So making him be a former member of the military, making him be a former Marine, that just sounds like a good idea in itself, because you're supporting people that in my country gave us freedom. So I'm a big fan of supporting anything like that. Nothing to Lose, I wrote, directed, and brought on a cinematographer for it. Fun fact about that film was we actually got to shoot in Marine City, which is where my grandparents used to own a flower shop. So I grew up in that city on the weekends, and they're working on the flower shop, de-thorning roses, and so much more. So it was fun to come back, get the permit legally, and get to film there. So that was a blast to create that. There's some art pieces that we did after that, which were Masterlock, which was basically a homage to Danger Girl, which was a comic book series. And I'm very much inspired by David Fincher, Stanley Kubrick, or artists like that. So I went very dark in Masterlock. And along with that, we had a series that we were trying to figure out what the name was. We had developed a 5-season story Bible for a series that started off as Medusozoa, which we changed the title over in later years just to Zoa, after talking to many different LA producers on the fact that it's such a dumb name, just call it this. I'm like, okay, whatever. I got you. I will say that, not a problem. Whatever changes you want, cool. And then we did a couple sizzlers where they were actually short films inside. And that was actually written. Those pieces were co-written at that time with my cinematographer, Jacob Chapman, who is no longer shooting, which is kind of a bummer, but love the man to death. I'll buy him lunch or dinner any day of the week. If I get to run into him, I would. Great man, great eye. Those were fun because it was alien abductions, and I wanted to kind of go at the portion of what would happen when you put a bunch of kids, like tweeners, after high school, before college, then put them in a mental state, because I love the psychology of storytelling. And you have these three tweeners. It had a series, many layers to it, many variations of the story that were all connected in the writing portion, which no one got to see. You just got to see Olivia and Adam. But the idealisms of a hardcore, very much true of faith Christian woman who refused to, give up virginity till marriage, a kid who's just a lost soul, and then you have a full-on atheist always trying to tempt. Well, you have these kids that are all somehow related to those three kids in a small town. And we started with Olivia just questioning why she exists. What is God? Why are we here? What's my meaning for life? And then she gets abducted by aliens. So if you took that character of someone that was a full-on hardcore Christian faith belief person, you abduct them by aliens, and you show them in season 2 interacting with giant, like 7-foot aliens, questioning everything, including their own faith. Things like that are some of the things I love to do. That, and I end up doing a lot of garbage B movies just for a quick cash grab. Unfortunately, going to a premiere for one of those later this week, and I'll see how that goes.
Before we decided with Jhon that I won't translate the answer, so you can talk freely. But I asked the favor to Jhon to ask you something, because you talk about that's the first time I'm a fan also Danger Girl. So I'm really interested in that project because I love the comic, I love the video game. It's the first time that I heard somebody talking about it here in the channel. So tell me more about that project, because it's talking. We are fans of the same project. So tell me more about that project about Danger Girl, man.
Oh, about the Danger Girl piece? Oh man,
Yeah.
that was a fun one. That one's out there on YouTube. You can go check it out on my channel. I think it's just youtube.com/McLaren Studios, something like that. But you can hunt me down through that, or just go YouTube and try and find Steve McLaren, and I'm sure you'll find it. Masterlock was a beautiful piece. We had done that. That was post-college graduation. That was 2014. We actually shot Olivia and Masterlock 2 weekends in a row, back to back. So Olivia was only 5 pages. We had 5 or 6 locations. We got that out and in 16 hours. But Masterlock was only 3 locations. So that one took us a little bit longer, but we still managed to punch it out in 3 days. It was a simple short film. Most of the stuff that I was designing at that time was trying to get into festival markets or just be able to send off to pitches. I loved the idea of Danger Girl when I was a younger kid in my youth, like all of those cover pieces by that one artist and everything, an idea of Indiana Jones meets a Bond girl. How could we make this even more fun, make her more intelligent? We pick up the story after the comic book had ended 10 years later. The one character of co-stars, I only got to read through like the first 7 pieces of Danger Girl. After that, I was just buying the cover art because I'm like, young, stupid, and, well, pretty girl cartoons. Hey, why not? Let's see what happens. But beautiful pieces of art. I really got into that cheesecake art by that artist, and I can't remember his name, but I know he was inspired by Greg Goodbrush, or by Goodbrush. But I believe that gentleman's name was Greg Johnson. He did a lot of cover art. He actually did the death of Captain America for Civil War and stuff like that. for the cover pieces, and the creation of him being able to do that with Image Comics, which was kind of an independent comic book, if you would believe that series as well. So that was a beautiful thing. So that kind of keeps you out of the danger zone of, how do I make this, but how do I make it my own, but how do I still keep it there? How do I still keep Abby Chase? How do I change the story? How do I make it crazy, but still keep it within the vial of like trying to figure out how to get a attractive blonde girl half naked and then move on past that. So we had the idea of the original members of the team of Jatenjor Girl were getting killed off by a serial killer. So I can't recall the one character, but they had kind of like the one lady that was a ginger, and she was kind of became the intern to the group. You had the brunette who turned out to be like a Nazi at the end of the first trade off. And then you have all these art characters that come and go as it became more and more cheesecake art. That's kind of when I fell off. But we sat there and we had her killed off in a horrible way. You never know what's going on. Then you get to see these different sides of the story where you see a serial killer talking to someone, but he's not really sure who he's talking to. He's just making martinis. He's talking about this knife he has and how it shows them their full structure or their beauty on the inside. At the same point, he meets up with Abby Chase at a bar. He sits there, he spikes her drink. We go through that, and that was one of the rare times I actually allowed people to have a wet set because we're at a real bar. So I'm not going to have them drink like virgin whatever. I'm just going to make sure they don't get into like 3 or 4. We let them get through like maybe 2 drinks and 1 drink just for shot purposes. You have the pill drop. You see all that. You see her come in. And then at that time, I had a silver envoy, and that thing must have made it into almost every single movie I was making. Kind of like a Sam Raimi thing with his little Pontiac LeSabre or whatever that was. I can't remember at the time, but that thing's still in movies of his to this day. Fellow Michigan filmmaker, so big fan of that. So, Evil Dead and things like that are a great inspiration as well as you're looking back on micro budgets. So we did that project. Like I said, I think we banged it out in 3 days. We did like the setup with everything and had to talk with the actress and talk her into being into at least bikini format and reveal and concerns about not wanting to show her butt. And then going through the actions and making it seem as creepy and humorous as we could to the volume of that. When she finally goes after the guy and she kills him with his own knife, and he's just there crying and begging for his life. And, she took that next step in the character. She went beyond saving people. She avenged someone. She killed a person. So that took it down a deep, darker hole, and that stylized look very much David Fincher. To this day, I still love, whether or not it's motivational light or it's just light the scene to make it look good, which was the whole idealisms of Fight Club. So I held a lot to that. Nothing to Lose, Danger Girl at that time. That was very much a green phase of my life. I do love having to accent things with green, but not have it overtake the scene. Not like Neon Demon or anything like that. Even though a lot of times doing a lot of these B-movie horror stuff as a cinematographer, that's 70% of what they want. And then you run into what this next premiere is going to be, just a small local premiere. It'll probably end up on Vudu or Tubi or something like that. I think the title change has changed like 20 times. But he was obsessed with red, which is one of the worst colors to try and light in film. And you're just like, well, you know what? Screw it. Let's give him exactly what he wants within Overhaul and just like paint the living hell out of it. The only time I had a problem with it was mixing red and green and things like that and getting a crusty purple in the bottom. So I'll see what that looks like probably this Thursday. And then it'll probably end up on Vudu or Tubi or something like that. That was directed by Bryn Stebbins, one of the original Motion Picture Institute graduates of like 1999, with Roland Noshoff, whose famous piece was Detroit Unleaded. I worked on one of her follow-up pieces as like a step-in DP where, you know, they went through so many DPs. I think by that time I was the third director of photography on that project, the second or third. And then I didn't even make it out. They replaced me with someone else. I don't even know if that movie got legs or ended up anywhere. You know, Master Lock was intended for just YouTube release because I knew off the top of my head, there's no way I can get this into festivals. I'm in trouble. You know, it's already an IP I don't own, but I just loved the value of it. So it was almost if David Fincher got his hands on Danger Girl. That's how dark and really out of it was there. We were really excited. We shot it on like a Red Scarlet. So that was a big deal. I mean, like, hey, for me, like, I'm an East Coast guy, so I've got the Shitty Rigs hat. I love that page. That's a dream of mine one day. Cinema camera behind me is a Zcam E2S6, and the E2 series was used to shoot 70% of the Mission Impossible Fatal Reckoning or Reckoning Part 1 or whatever they named it. Of course, it was the big brother camera, the E2F6, the full frame. Only reason why I purchased that camera was I can change the front mount on that. So I can take that mount off there. Right now it's an EF. I can sit there and swap out for an E mount and put a PL mount on that. And it has the same sensor as the ARRI Alexa Mini LF, and the Alexa Mini. So it seemed like a good idea to go with that type of color spectrum, be able to let them manipulate and then buy the LUTs so you can just film it on set and be done. You color grade in the project. And I like to do that a lot. I like to be fearless. I like to throw the color in ahead of time. I like to sit there and design it, come into it, like big fan of shot deck and all of that stuff. So yeah, very much so. Danger Girl project was fun. I loved it. Looking back on it, my DV and I had one argument about a shot, and I should have listened to him and had him get that shot, because to this day, I still look back on and go, no, he was right. I should have done that. But we were crunched for time and we had to get all this coverage. But it was still a fun project. Shot in a basement of a house for sale in Livonia. It looked horrible, gutty, and just disgusting. But that's what you kind of want when you're making this kind of dark movie stuff. The amount of times that I've been subjected to lead paint and all that other stuff you're not supposed to inhale on a movie set, I'm like, I'll go earlier. I'm fine. No big deal. But yeah, no, and nothing to lose. Very much just about person addiction, not being able to escape that addiction, trying to make a world a better place for his own daughter. I didn't have kids at the time. I don't have kids now. I've got a niece. I've shot like a little movie for her with all her little dolls. We need to edit that up. You know, things like that. Currently, I work at a company called the Actors Loft. And I shoot a lot of actors' monologues and a lot of, scene studies, either at that loft or at, the person who owns the company, his home, trying to give them a little more energy. We recently went on a venture to create a short film, and, that's where all the students come. They pay for the class, they develop the story, they write the story. They had some guidance with kind of like one of those sneaky filmmakers that did a lot of great stuff in the 90s. He's a great screenwriter. He's rep by CAA, and he came in and he helped them kind of like own the screenplay and tighten it and make it what it is. The narrative story changed from like a episode of Supernatural to more of a narrative on how cell phones and people addicted to social media overtakes the land. So we've been running around trying to hunt money for that one to get all the finishing money. You know, I'd like to get paid the rest of the way out. I only come after them once we're passing that 90. I'm like, we're passing that 90. We have a problem. You have to pay me. Otherwise, I have to take action, you know, stuff like that, which sucks. But that's the indie move. That's the indie industry. You know, once you get into that 90, then you're like, now I got to go report you. Now I got to go do this. I got to go do that. Fortunately, that person's a really good friend of mine. So none of that went into that point. It was just like, come on, man, you got to, because you see what's going on. You see the budgets going into post production until it's finished in post. Then they're going to come back and they're going to find the money to pay you out. Since you're an EP, you know, you're like first in, last out. So you have to live with that. Being an executive producer on that project, just due to the fact that I own a bunch of equipment. So that was all shot on that camera. That was all shot on Zeiss glass that the Actors Loft owned. And then everything was lit on lights I own. You know, I kept on trying to convince people to let me haze everywhere I went. Luckily, the antique shop, they didn't have a problem with it. And we busted out like the smoke ninjas and hazed the living hell out of it. Got some nice light beams, got some nice accent. Give it that very filmic look that I kept on fighting for in every single room. Just being like, do you guys have fire alarms? Will vapor set them off? Do I need a ladder? Can I pull the plug? And like a lot of times you just get told no. And it's like, I should have never just asked. I should have just done it. But sometimes when you're working on different projects, you're like, sometimes it's better to ask for permission than forgiveness, as opposed to like the good going saying is it's always better to ask for forgiveness than permission. But when you're dealing with larger, you know, like a studio rental place where it's like in downtown Detroit, $65 an hour, and you're like, oh, we only got this for 10 hours. That's coming out of our budget. Or we're at this coffee shop. They give us a deal at the same point, like $50 an hour or something like that. I can't sit there and cause an incident where you're going to bring in, you know, fire trucks or anything like that. It's going to shut down production. You have to be smart. So once someone said, yeah, we don't have fire detectors, haze the living hell out of it, man. Make it look better. Any more questions you guys have to ask? I am also getting back into the director's chair again, doing stuff like that, working on writing some stuff, working on proof of concept of a few screenplays. Take Nothing to Lose, and I've advanced that narrative story. It's like it won't get out of my head. It's been in there for like 12, 13 years, and now I'm doing it femme fatale style, where I actually like having a lead female character for people to be able to relate with. I feel that's much more of a fun-inducing story. Then I also live in like whatever's there, and you read what you know, but I needed to step away from that, step outside of that, because I wanted to keep on coming back to military. I've had friends that suffer from survivor's guilt, where you see them show up and they have a fifth of like rum or whiskey. And I'm like, what's going on, man? They're like, I intend on drinking this entire thing before the night's over. I just saw my best friend in the rearview mirror. He's dead. He just visited me, and just watching someone suffer through that. So I developed a screenplay where I'm not going to tell you as much, but it's more or less like a Latin woman, whether it's going to be Colombian descent, because I mean, beautiful people no matter what, or if it's just Hispanic, Mexican, Spanish, however it goes. We're going to set it up where she's from Mexican town, because unfortunately in America, every like big city has Mexican village or Mexican town. They have one in Detroit. It's great. It's the only time that I can actually get good tacos, like tacos de cabeza, like personal favorite of mine. I can't remember how to say the tongue ones, but those are also delicious. I love those as opposed to like you go to a gringo joint and you're like El Pastor, and I'm like, no, this isn't real, man. Like, let's go get the good stuff. You know, you get a little more West Coast and you get like a decent Cubano sandwich. Oh my God. Or in Florida or anywhere like that. Anywhere where there's true heritage of like Hispanic heritage thriving in that area, you're going to get the better food. And I mean, come on, man. I'm a fluffy guy. I'm a bit heavier set. So I like a good, delicious, like taco made out of cow's face. It's awesome. I love it. And I want to tell this story about survivor's guilt, PTSD, where she's in there. She's talking to her best friend, but she knows he's dead because she carried his body to the forward operating base closest to where they were on a mission where they basically just got destroyed. The mission went south. Everybody died but her. Then she's getting honorously discharged because psychologically, being the only survivor of your own team, they're going to send you home. There's no way to keep you there. And she wasn't even actually a soldier. She was a translator. Because I had worked and I taught at a film school called the Nashville Film Institute in Tennessee, like Nashville, Tennessee. I got to work with a lot of different military people because they brought in a lot of people through the GI Bill. I had those friends and I ran the script by them. And they're like, that would never happen. This would never occur. She needs to be a translator. Let's go with that. Go that direction. She should be Persian. Because I think when I started was, it was like some cute, like Abby Chase, like white blonde chick. And he's like, that would never happen. Persian would be the best way to translate. Then I'm doing all the research on Persian. And I'm like, no, this isn't working. Then I went into like Latin America and everything else on that value. And I could relate more to that stuff and that culture of people. And you have so much to that, Day of the Dead, so much beautiful things on that narrative story. And originally I developed it for a series. I was working on it as a story Bible, and everyone that read it said it's a feature. So basically I had to write an entire pilot television show to find out, like, no, you got to start over again. You're like, that's life, man. I mean, like, once again, you gotta get back into it. And then I'm also like red beard, very Celtic. So Scottish, McLaren might be a dead giveaway. I'm not sure. You tell me. But I wanted to write one kind of about my heritage and the paganism about that. And I really wanted to go into the dark and value and research of that. Finding out that the god of the forest was never the devil till Catholicism came in, and like Roman Catholicism came in and turned that God that was supposed to be a God harvesting you, the hunt of feeding the tribe, to being like, oh, it's a guy with deer horns coming out of its head. That's obviously a demon. So you have to do the research on all of that, go through all the paganism on that one, try and figure out how to tell a story. That one's more male orientated. And that one's devised on like, everybody has problems. Everybody has, addictions or bad habits. I wanted to go through the story of, like this character who doesn't even know that he's paying for the sins of his father. He's part of like sacrifices and things, but was never brought to it. And telling that story from there and bringing that character alive and just trying to sit there and get back to what makes sense to me, psychological thrillers, things like that, back to the scary horror stuff. So psychological thrillers, supernatural, having to pay for the sins of your father, time slip, where he time travels back in time, meets his mom, meets his dad, never met his mom. She was sacrificed for him to be in the next line to do the sacrifices. His uncle took him over and he was never aware till one day he snaps and kills a woman and knows exactly how to hide a body. And is going through this torment of transition. You don't know what's going on. Have many different titles because I'd basically just written in a white room at that point in time. That was writing with a partner of mine. Her and I are no longer anything like business partners, friends, or anything like that. This business, when you spend too much time with everybody, like 20 hours a day, 24 hours a day, it's going to take a toll on any type of relationship. So no more like finding love on set was a big rule and big overhang whenever I'm on a production. Guys, if you're in relationships, cool. We're not starting relationships on this show. We're going to move past that. If you guys want to hang out or spend time together when we're done, cool. Let's do that. But not while we're here, not during my project. I don't have time for the garbage. I don't need to rehire people. That's not something that I need. I have other things coming out. I did a short film that was designed as a TV pilot for Shudder. I did not write this one. I just directed that one. That was 4 days of production, probably $10K worth of costs. Bringing on like a new DP because my original DP couldn't make it. We ran into an issue where nepotism took over, and there was an actor that was hired where the writer really wanted this person to be in it. They couldn't make the dates. I instantly, I have a schedule. I'm like, let's just fire her. Let's just go with all the backup actors, get them signed off. Let's make our date. The closer and closer we got to it, 2 weeks before production. Production went dark, shut everything down, reset the date, did the table read, and actors were like, if the date changes again, I can't be attached. I'm like, date changes again, I can't be attached. So we made those days happen, did it like 2 weekends in a row. First day was all outside. I had no first AD because the first AD who I had planned on bringing it on was offended by the script and then dropped off. So I had to handle everything and all the scheduling on my own. I did all the script breakdown. Like, I was very fortunate when I went to MPI, I got a lot of toolage from Catherine McDermott, who was the former vice president of Columbia Pictures for 29 years. So things like Last of the Mohicans and other pieces like that, that was during her heyday before she became an instructor. So you can sit there, you can give me a script, and I'll sit there and I'll have it broken down in like 4 or 5 days, as long as I have access to the software, full feature lengths. Like, here's all your characters, here's all your stunts, here's all your props, all that stuff. I was trained very much that way. As a director, I'm very much onto the basis of like Hitchcock, Coppola, Kubrick, how they would have like a very in-depth prompt book. Similar to like how David Fincher has a very in-depth idea on like what's in his head, or Tim Burton would just show up and say, hey, here's a drawing. This is what we're going to do. It's like, okay, cool. So I show up and I'm like, here's a meticulous shot list down to the minutes. I'm like, once we're set up, we're good. We should only have 5 minutes for each shot. Actors should be warmed up. We'll start on the wides, coming on the tights. Whereas Bruce Campbell likes to shoot Russian style, where he likes to do the close-ups first and then go to the wides, because he's like, I want you when your makeup looks the best. Or you're like in the best mentality, or that's his style as a director. I mean, everybody's got their thing. As a director of photography, I'm very much like, I like to paint all my colors in the camera, not build it for post. I mean, I'll design it so they can take and do whatever they need to in post, but I like to have it more or less like our thematic colors, our development, go through shot deck, have a collection of things and go, this is the direction I want to go in. When I directed the pilot, it's a mashup between a narrative story and a mockumentary of people trying to sell a ghost show. So I'm like, okay, there's many, many layers and many like volumes of onion on this story. We got to figure out where the full-on narrative is. And what it came to at the end was the narrative was a love story. So you have to sit there and deal with this over sexualized, offensive screenplay. And I'm just like, yeah, sure, man. No problem. Let's bang it out. Make a couple bucks. Maybe if it gets residuals or anything, I can come out on top on that or come back to the series. But, it's just kind of when it came to the creative end, I saw it one direction. The writer saw it in our direction. The writer was the main executive producer. He was the money behind it. I had basically changed a lot of the script on set, but I also shot like my early takes. Whenever, as a director, I like to just let the actors go and do what they're going to do on take one. I want to see what they had in mind first, because they have all my notes. They have all the color spectrum. I designed everything down to like, this character can only be elements in this spectrum of color. This character can only be in elements of this spectrum of color, so on and so forth, because psychology of color and just like knowing how to inspire people through color and through visuals is very important for me. Whether I'm a director of photography or a director, I always want that idea of color bringing off value, like the greens and the yellows, very comfortable, very trusting. Like if you go back and you watch M. Night Shyamalan's Unbreakable, all the colors set up in that one probably had some similar designs on that. We kept this one very much, when it was doc style, very much in the pearls and the blues of very midsummer. And then when we moved into the actual love story, we went and we changed the whole spectrum of color to very warm colors, very much closer to Skyfall. And the idea on that was based on an old independent horror movie, Behind the Mask, the true story of Leslie Vernon. I don't know if you guys know about that one. Mockumentary style documentary where it was 133 or 43, or you want to see it like old fat box TV style for all the documentary stuff. And then the frame would expand and cinema bars would come down and would turn into a horror movie whenever it was happening inside of it. So it was basically a variation of Inception before Inception. So we did the same thing with that. And then it was just fun to shoot a love story at the end, getting past the raunchy comedy, basically a reverse rom-com, something that's more or less to get the boyfriend to go, something like Fired Up, Girl Next Door, things like that, where it's basically a dude's love story because you're trying to sell sex to get it there, to get them in the room. Girl Next Door was based on a girl trying to leave the porn industry and then the dude just falling in love with her. That was Alicia Kuthrop, was 24, if you remember her from The Daughter from the 24 TV series. And I think she had like one cameo shot of them just selling her sexuality in Old School after the party with Snoop Dogg. She was the girl that's left with Luke Wilson and just him waking up from being blackout drunk. So little things like that. I think she's further gone on. She did a Netflix series with Ashton Kutcher. That was very good to see her kind of back in the limelight again, just to see her, because she was amazing talent nonetheless. Pretty or not, the woman can act. So that was kind of the beauty of that, getting you into those stories. And then I think Fired Up, I think I fell into that one on just out of the acting ability of Eric Olson Scott. I can't remember the dude has three names, but he's basically Deeks from NCIS Los Angeles. Like that character value. He was also one of the people in the prequel of The Thing, where everybody thought it was a remake, and he was one of the characters in that one. So, but that's actually supposed to be the people that the dogs come from in the original thing with, God bless America. I cannot remember everybody's name anymore. But yeah, no, that was a beautiful piece. That was one of those ones that kind of became a cult classic. You had all the practical monsters, and I'm a big fan of practical. I would rather develop and design everything as practical as possible, as opposed to developing and designing everything for CG. If we can get it inside the camera, I think that is a better way to tell a story before you go into the trickery of going into CG and everything else. I mean, I've worked as a compositor. Probably the majority of my titles are in the visual effects department, unfortunately. So I come at it from a different point of view. I see it from, oh, we got to composite all of this stuff together. Oh, we've got to design this for stereo. Oh, we got to do this. We got to do that. So I know those problems ahead of time. When you go to actually shoot them, you want to work there and you want to have that mindset where you look at the gentleman who created Alien. And me. All right.
Okay, Steve. Finally, tell us your social media, but please invite people and send you regards to Colombia, your website for your next projects. Tell us.
Not a problem, man. First of all, thank you for having me. It's great to meet different people. Colombia is an amazing place. It's beautiful. I've heard so many great stories. I've worked with people that have actually been there and other areas, and just beautiful people, beautiful food, beautiful traditions. Very much so. I greatly appreciate everything that Colombia has. Thank you so much for what would you like, sir?
Before finally, my last question is, how do you define your work in one word?
For me, how would I define my work? I am a dirty indie filmmaker. That would be the truth of the matter. I have worked on multi-million-dollar films. I have worked on $100,000 films. I've worked on $10,000 films, $2 films, and free films. And the thing is, the more independent the project is, usually you get a lot more control on the creativity of it. The higher up you go on the echelon, you have to suffer through producer-driven products. And that's okay. Like, I don't mind putting products in stuff and telling stories, but that's kind of the downside. You lose a lot of control. So I'm an independent filmmaker, and that's how I would describe myself. I work mainly as a director DP, and I like to tell stories, whether it's my story or someone else's. That's kind of my life.
Oh, thank you so much for your answer. My God, shower blessing on your life. Thank you so much, man. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jhon. I appreciate
my
it.
Pleasure. My pleasure, man. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Good job, man.
Thank you. And if you can find me on socials on Instagram and
okay,
like Twitter, Steve McLaren 13, at Steve McLaren 13 on Instagram and Twitter. And those will direct you to my websites, and that's the best way for you to find me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to be brought on to your show and have the pleasure to be interviewed by you yourself, sir. Thank you so much. Seriously, thank you.
Thanks to you, man. Me too. Thank you.
All right, brother.
Bye-bye.
Bye.